Welcome to the Healing While Discovering Yourself podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Michelle. I'm an intuitive transformational coach, certified life coach, certified NLP practitioner, and speaker. I've spent the last 22 plus years helping myself and my clients learn how to create their own happiness and live more abundant lives. In this time, I've also overcome and healed from child sexual molestation, a compulsive eating disorder, hunger, and homelessness. Now it's your turn to move forward with your life and heal from childhood traumas or past experiences. In this podcast, I'll share how I was able to overcome all of my past struggles, as well as my personal stories of overcoming jealousy, loneliness, resentment, and bitterness, and how I learned to forgive. I'll also help you explore your shadow self, deal with having low or no self-esteem, and address feelings of not being worthy or loved. Using my personal experiences and extensive training, as well as stories of grief, loss, depression, and anxiety from my guests, I'll help you change your life and finally heal.
Welcome back to the Healing While Discovering Yourself podcast. And if you are new around here, welcome. I am so excited about today's podcast episode because I don't know if many of y'all know that I was and partially still am interested in bodybuilding competition, in a bodybuilding competition for myself, which is interesting because at one point in my life, I weighed well over 250 pounds. I remember getting on the scale and it's at 267. So this idea of bodybuilding is it's a new concept for me. And part of me wants to do it because I'm I want to show myself that I can do it. But then another part of me is is this punitive, Andrea? Because I was running marathons and it was punitive because I had a compulsive eating disorder. I've talked about that on the podcast before. If y'all don't know, go back to some episodes. I can't tell you which one it was, but I'm pretty sure I talked about it before. But anyway, so as the idea of competing in a bodybuilding competition kept swirling around in my head, there was one person that I knew to reach out to because not only did she compete in a bodybuilding competition, but I remember when she first started and to see her transformation was just absolutely amazing to me. And so I reached out to her and asked her a couple of questions, and I am so grateful for her honesty and her bravery and her courage to just be honest with me about the bodybuilding industry. Now, I want to put this out there that what we're going to talk about is in no way a generalization of everybody in the bodybuilding industry. We're not talking about everyone who bodybuilds competitively. This is not an everyone or nothing situation. This is all based on her experience. So I keep saying her name is Kristen. And we actually met, I think it was 2014, because we were both training to be certified body pump instructors. And when we met at the training, we learned that we had so much in common. Both of us liked running. We were training for marathons. Both of us were accountants. Well, Kristen still is an accountant. She's a CPA. And at the time I was a finance manager. I've since obviously retired from the corporate world. And now I'm a intuitive transformational trauma sensitive coach. But anyway, so we just had so much in common. So we kind of bonded, over that and stayed in touch on Facebook and all of that. And so I reached out to her and she was so open and so honest about her experience that I was I think more people need to hear this, and I would love for you to come on the podcast. And she graciously agreed to come on the podcast and talk to you about healing, after competing and dealing with body positivity and toxic positivity within, not just within the bodybuilding world, but just life in general. So that was my brief introduction of you, but that wasn't brief at all. So Welcome, and please share with us whatever you want us to know about you.
Thank you. Actually, I really just wanted to reiterate what you said about this is my experience. It's not everyone's experience. It's what I experienced. It's what I witnessed in my experience. Obviously, I competed at a local level in Wisconsin, so it's what I saw there and what I've kind of learned from following people on Instagram and some of those things. But yeah, we met in 2014, you're right, training for Body Pump, and I was training for a marathon. So I've run 6 or 7 full marathons, 12 half marathons, did a half Ironman. And at some point after running a few marathons, I was like, I want to do something different. I've always been really goal oriented with my fitness. So I was actually always into sports. In high school, I ran track and did gymnastics. In college, there was a few years where I didn't do a lot of sports, put on a little bit of weight, nothing, terrible. And then got back into fitness, into weightlifting, became a body pump instructor, things like that. And then when I was running marathons, it was always like, my type of personality is I'm really good at rule following. Probably makes me a really good accountant.
Yes, I was just going to say it. That's why you're a CPA.
So that's just my personality is like, when I would follow marathon training plans, it was like, if the plan was written, I was going to follow it. So even if I didn't want to, if it was raining, if I didn't feel I was going to go run.
Yes.
And that always helped a lot. It kept me, I don't really need to be motivated because I'm super disciplined. So if it's written down, I'm going to do it. So I always took my training really seriously. And then after every marathon, I always had like post-marathon blues where just like I had hit this goal and it was like, and then what?
Yeah.
And I don't really know exactly where the bodybuilding idea came from. Like, I don't know if I had maybe just joined Instagram and was like seeing all these people doing it. And I'm like, I really like, because my last couple years of marathon training, I was doing a lot of lifting. I mean, I was teaching body pump 2 or 3 times a week. I was running and I was lifting on my own. So I would run, I would do an 18-mile run and go to the gym and lift when I was done. And
what?
Yeah. And I would not recommend that. It was not great to try to focus on both things, but I had gotten really into wanting to build muscle and see that my physique change. Because when I started adding weightlifting into running, my physique changed a lot. Yeah. And so I started doing more going down, lifting heavy weights, using free weights, and then still running because that's what I like to do. But then I was like, you know what? I really like, the way my physique is changing. I really like how I feel lifting weights. And so I think that's when I started reaching out to a couple coaches just to kind of see, because you always want to interview your coach. You want to make sure it's the right fit. So I reached out to a couple people. I had a little bit of sense in mind, what I thought was acceptable and what I thought wasn't acceptable. So when asking coaches hey, what does your training program look like? How is this going to go? Because I knew that I had heard some places, there's people eating 1,000 calories and doing hours of cardio every day. And I know that's not good, but there's some people that don't know that's not good. And that's why.
Right.
So when you asked me about competing, sorry, I'm rambling a little.
No, you're fine. This is good information.
When you asked me about competing, I don't talk about it a lot because I feel like the circle of people, especially on my Facebook page, they aren't the people that kind of would understand that kind of stuff. And I also feel like people don't really care. I feel like people are like, when I talk about the things I struggled with, I feel like a lot of people see me and are like, you're fit, what do you have to complain about? Or you couldn't possibly have an eating disorder or disordered eating or issues with your body image because look at you. Yes. And I can, even when I post things on Facebook, I kind of get that feedback. I post it and people are like, oh, I wish I looked like that. Or, oh, I wish I had some of your motivation. It's but so I don't even feel comfortable sharing my experience sometimes because I feel like it's just going to come off there's going to be backhanded comments about well, you look fine. Or there couldn't possibly be anything wrong with you. Or maybe it comes off narcissistic or something. I'm trying to get people to comment or compliment me. Because what could I possibly have to complain about? That's part of why I don't talk about it a lot. But when you ask me about it, I felt like I needed to be honest, but I also don't ever really want to scare someone away from doing it. I just want you to know what it's like so that you can go into it with a different headspace and make sure that you come out of it the best way that you can.
And you know what, to your point, I don't mean to cut you off, but I just want to make sure this is clear too. Because when I did reach out to you, you didn't scare me away. You were honest with me, and it wasn't in a way where you were discouraging me. You laid out, hey, this was my experience, but make sure you interview these coaches, ask them these questions, blah, blah, blah. So you were very helpful. So I just want to put that out there, that when I came to you and you shared what we're going to, get into, it wasn't like you were discouraging me. So I just want to add to your point of not discouraging people, because you didn't discourage me. You're just very honest. But again, what you shared was so powerful. I'm like, I think more people need to hear this.
Yeah, I think a lot of people see it from the outside and think like, oh, look, these bodies look so cool. Like, look at how great they look, but they don't realize like what goes into it or the damage that can happen. Mm-hmm. So from my experience, I actually had a pretty good coach. We didn't do anything super extreme. Like, I wasn't doing hours of cardio. I think the lowest my food was 1,500. And that's not very low. I mean, I know women in my everyday life that eat less than that. So it wasn't super taxing on my body, but I did lose my cycle. And there's a lot of I was getting up early in the morning and doing fasted cardio and then going back after work and lifting weights, and you have to prep every meal and track every ounce, every lick, every, touch of food. There's no wiggle room. So it becomes like a part-time job. So literally all I did is eat, sleep, work, and train.
Wow.
And it's isolating. So I have a boyfriend who didn't compete. So some people will, if they're with someone who doesn't compete, they're like, oh, you can't have snacks in the house because I can't eat it and I can't control myself. You know what I mean? You're like, I'm dieted and restricted, and if I see it, I'm going to eat everything. So you guys can't have it in the house because it'll make me want to eat it. Mm-hmm. And I felt like that's not fair. It's that he didn't make this choice, but that doesn't make it easy. By the end, it was like, if you're going to eat an Oreo, you eat it downstairs or I might strangle you. Because I haven't eaten an Oreo in 8 weeks and that looks really good. But it was
so funny.
I remember, must have been Easter, because I actually competed 4 years ago, almost to the dot.
Has it been 4 years already?
Yeah. So I got a Facebook memory on Thursday, I think. 4 years ago was the first time. I did 2 shows that same year and I never competed again. But so anyways, it must have been Easter. I remember my boyfriend's family going out for Easter brunch, and I'm like, I can't go. Because I can't sit at a buffet and watch everyone else eat and not touch anything. So I literally ate Easter breakfast at my house by myself. So it can be very isolating.
And this is what people don't talk about, right? They don't share these stories like, oh my gosh, my entire family is having a good time going out for brunch while I'm sitting at home by myself at my kitchen counter eating alone.
Yeah. And so my boyfriend's birthday was in February. I was competing then. We had dinner at his mom's house. I have to bring containers of food because I can't eat anything I don't prepare myself, that I can't track and measure 100%. Now, you might get a free meal here and there, but you still have to be careful. And I only got them every so often. So a lot of times it was like, oh, we're going to go out to dinner. I'm going to bring my own food. We went to a restaurant. It was like, okay, I have to order chicken, rice, and vegetables. You can't cook anything in butter. And I have to bring my own dressing if I want a salad, because you can't, a restaurant there's so much stuff that goes in there that you don't know. So it's just a lot of, and then people look at you weird. You're like that girl who brings her food in her purse, or it was a lot. And then it isolated me a little bit from my friends, because that's not fun. I couldn't drink. I couldn't really be out late because I had to get good sleep and I had to get up in the morning and I had to do cardio and I had to train. And so when my friends are at the bar, it's like, well, I could go, but what fun is that? So I stayed at home, and then it became, that was just kind of who I was. And so even after that, people wouldn't ask me to come out and do stuff. I'm the person who just stays at home and does her own thing. And so people don't realize that depending on if all your friends are also competitors, or your family or your boyfriend is, it's different. But when you're around a bunch of people that aren't, it's not the same.
Kristen, what do you say to people because this just came to me, right? Because like you said in the beginning, you're a rule follower, blah, 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 blah. So of course you're going to follow the rules and be strict and, eat alone and all of that. But what do you say to people who are like, well, that's not my personality type, so I don't have to, I'm not going to be isolated because I like being around my friends and my family. So what do you say to those people who have different personality types who will say, well, it happened for you because you're a rule follower?
I would say, from my experience and from the people that I know in the bodybuilding world, that's who enters those types of things. The people who can do that, because if you can't, you can get on stage, but you're not going to be very good at it. If some people are better at going out and still being around that, even if they don't partake. And that, I think that works for some people, but there are still going to be times where you're going to be the odd man out. You go to a family dinner, you can't necessarily eat what they're eating. And for some people that's okay. And it didn't bother me a ton. I did get comments, and that's where it started to people would be like, oh, so after I was done competing, it was Mother's Day, I think, because I competed twice in April. And so we went to my boyfriend's mom's house for dinner, and I get comments like, well, I didn't know what you could eat, because I had been the person that came with containers. So it's well, I didn't know if you could eat that, or I didn't know what I should make you. Or then people would see me who had seen me during my prep days. I would come and I would eat cake. Oh, I didn't know you could eat cake. And it just is I know they don't mean harm, but it is very it's hard to be but I can. My choice was not to, because I was doing something, but to have someone pay attention. Right. It's I don't stop watching what I'm doing, because I don't watch how you eat or comment on how you eat. Right. So it was very hard to have people comment on my eating habits. Oh, I didn't know you could eat cake, or I didn't know what we could have that you could eat. And it's this is my choice. And so I'm never going to ask you to cook for me. If I need to eat something different, I'll bring my own food. And again, that's all about who's around you. And I was never very good about speaking up and saying, hey, I really don't like when you comment on what I put in my body. So could you please not? And so if you have the ability to do that, and I think now I might, but back then I didn't, that maybe that would be a different experience. But it was I struggled a lot internally to have people comment on what I was eating. Oh, you can eat this, or you can't eat that, or I don't know what you can and can't do. And it's well, you don't really need to worry about that.
Right. So what do you say to people who, because you kind of mentioned it earlier with an eating disorder, disordered eating. I know people say it. I use it both ways, disorder eating, eating disorder, to people who see you. Okay. So let me take a step back. So one of the things that I learned in healing myself from a compulsive eating disorder is that size really doesn't matter. You can be uber skinny and still have a compulsive eating disorder or bulimia or anorexia. And you can also be overweight, obese, and still struggle with compulsive eating, bulimia, you know what I mean? All of that kind of stuff. And so I've learned that size is really, it really doesn't matter when it comes to disordered eating. And so what do you say to people who basically say it's all in your head, these issues that you developed because of eating, because your body is fine?
I honestly, I don't think I've had anyone say that to me, because I don't talk about it very much. So a lot of times I talk to people who have gone through the same thing. So I have a few friends from my competing days who are kind of in the same boat. And they're the people that I go to when I'm I want to binge eat, or I'm having a really hard time. So I never struggled with eating disorders before. Now, I'm not saying I ate well or I didn't overeat sometimes, but
wait, I just want to stop right there, because I think this is a very important point. Before competing in the bodybuilding world, you did not struggle, have any eating disorders. Because when I met you, I thought your body was amazing. You know what I mean? Whatever, I've always admired your body. I'm that type of woman who's oh my gosh, love her body. So I just want to make that clear, that you didn't struggle at all before you started competing.
No, I didn't. At least not that I could, not something that I remember. Like I said, my diet wasn't great. There was days I ate graham crackers and frosting for dinner.
Of course, all of us.
But I didn't have this binge restrict mindset that I remember. So if I did, I blocked that out, but I don't remember being like that. So I also was much more confident in my body. So I remember before competing, probably like in 2015 or 2016, and you may remember this, like I posted a lot of like pictures on Facebook about like flexing or what. I was so proud of what I was building. And so we're 4 years past competing and I'm still having issues. Like when I look at myself in the mirror now, I don't love the way I look as much as I loved the way I looked then. And I feel like I actually have a better physique now than I did then, but I was more confident in it then than I am now. So that's the trick with bodybuilding. That's how it plays on your mind. It was like, I saw myself so lean. So like now anything other than that isn't good enough. But if I put a picture from 2016 next to a picture from now, I have more muscle mass, more definition, less fat, but I have a harder time looking in the mirror and not picking myself apart. In 2016, I looked in the mirror and I was like, oh, I look great. Look at this new muscle. I feel fantastic. And now I'm like, I feel gross and I shouldn't wear shorts. Oh, my arms aren't defined enough. I should put a long sleeve shirt on. And that's what happened to me from competing. I never felt like that before. And so that was hard. And then you throw on food insecurities on top of that. So I thought I was going to compete again. When I was done in 2017, I was like, okay, we're in off season. We're going to do this again. And then over the next couple of months, like I binge ate a lot. I would drive to the gas station and buy food and eat it in the car and throw the wrappers in the garbage so that no one would know.
I did that before I healed from my compulsive eating disorder. I did the exact same thing. Like I would go to Walgreens. They would have 3 Snickers for $2. I would, as soon as I got in the car, I would eat 2 of them and then save one. And then when I got get rid of the wrappers and then got home, eat the one, keep that wrapper. Cause it's like, I'm not hiding it. Cause look, they see this wrapper.
Yeah.
I totally get it.
I remember going to Quick Trip once. I was out like running errands and I was like, oh, I'm going to stop at Quick Trip. And they have like the 7-layer bars and the peanut butter bars with chocolate on top. And I got one of each and I ate them both in the car on my 5-minute drive home. And I threw the wrappers in the garbage so that John wouldn't know. And when I would come home. I remember too, one time I went to like brunch with a friend and I would, I eat a lot because I still now I eat, 2,500 calories a day. So when I go to breakfast.
But you work out a lot though. You work out a ton and you do heavy lifting.
Yeah. So when I go out to breakfast, a lot of times I eat more than like the females I go to breakfast with because I have a high metabolism and I eat a lot. But I would go to brunch and I would eat and then I would come home and I would stand it if John wasn't home because I won't do it if someone can see me. I would stand in my closet and I would eat 3 cookies. And then I was like, well, now I need something salty. So I'd eat a bunch of chips and then I'd eat like 3 bowls of cereal. And then it was like, even when I didn't have junk food in the house, I could binge on anything. I mean, I could, if I had chocolate chips for baking in the cupboard and peanut butter, I would eat spoonfuls of peanut butter and chocolate chips, anything that I could binge on. And then I would go to during the week, I'd be super strict. And so at that point I was like, I don't know that I'm ready to compete again. I don't know that this is a good thing. So I started working with a different coach, not for competing, just for everyday life. And I had confided in her a little bit about these are things I'm struggling with. And one of the things that they had talked to me about is like, we think you're being really restrictive all week long and then binging on everything you don't allow yourself to have. But I didn't even feel like I was restricting myself. I was counting macros, but I was trying to be like kind of flexible. But during the week, I was very strict. And then we tried doing like an untracked meal on a weekend. And anytime I wasn't tracking, I would binge. Anytime I didn't know exactly what was in a food, it gave me anxiety. Can you imagine sitting at work and your friend texting you, do you want to go to dinner tonight? And I say, I can't because my macros are already counted for the day and I don't know how to navigate that.
Wow.
And
so what do you think? I mean, because I just think it's just so interesting to me because we see these women who are bodybuilders. And again, I just want to make it clear, we're not saying all women, all people who compete, blah, blah, blah. I just got to keep saying that so people understand that this is based on your experience and the conversations you have with your friends who are also in the industry. So we see people who are, they just have like these cut bodies, just like ripped. And it's like, oh my gosh, like what insecurities could they possibly have with their bodies? So what do you think is like the driving force behind this, I guess for lack of a better word, this distortion? Because like you said, we met in 2014. And I've always admired your body. And I remember you posting pictures, like you do like back pictures, and I'm like, dang, look at her back. And this is before you started training or whatever. And so it looked good. So what is behind this distortion where you can see yourself in 2016 with all this confidence and then see yourself now and have a better looking body, like more cut, but then still feel worse than the 2016 picture? What do you think is behind that?
I'm not sure. So I will say one thing is I do think competing, a lot of people get into it because of insecurities. Like it's a sport that insecure people, even people who, I listened to a podcast where all of the guys were trainers and they're like, I got into fitness because I was insecure with how I looked. I don't think that someone who is in their mind going, all I want to do is lose weight, that I don't think that's the right place to start. And like, it's not like I'm starting from overweight and I want to compete to get in shape. I don't feel like that's a healthy thing to do. I feel like you need to be in a place where you're like, I'm good with my body. I'm good with where I'm at. I know how to train. I know how to eat. I've built my metabolism. There's a lot of these people that come into it and they're maybe a little bit overweight and they're eating 1,500 calories. And it's like, now you cut, where do you go from there? Where do you go from 1,500 calories when you, I dropped probably 700 calories while I was competing. So it's like, okay, now you're eating 800 calories and doing cardio. You're going to wreck yourself. But yeah, a lot of insecure people get into it. And then I think part of it is like, once you see yourself super lean, when you can't stay like that. What people don't realize is what I look like on stage, that is not sustainable long-term. Like I said, I lost my period. I couldn't go to the bathroom. I had 5 days of not going to the bathroom. I had to take smooth move teas and stuff because your body isn't meant to run like that. And
that's true.
So it's like, it's not sustainable. All of that is for one day on a stage, 1 day.
Wow.
And really 5 minutes. I was on stage for 10 minutes total. So you do all of that work, pay all of that money to stand on stage for 10 minutes and have someone look at you. And then by the next day you drink water and you don't look the same anymore. And then it's like, now you have to start putting weight back on because that's not sustainable. And watching yourself put weight on is never easy. And I think that's where part of it comes from, is like, I'm not good enough because I'm not that lean person on the stage anymore. But that is not sustainable. And that's, as much as I can tell myself, like, this isn't sustainable, you're not going to look like this forever, it's not easy to watch yourself come the other way. And then you also have to take into consideration that bodybuilding is literally standing on a stage getting judged by someone else about how you look. So I did marathons. That's all about me. I was never going to win, but I could be better than I was. And no one was judging me on how I looked. It's literally, it's black or white. This is the time that you run. You either crossed the finish line first or you didn't. It's very objective.
Right.
A bodybuilding show is not objective. Like, there's certain things they're looking for when in each type, because there's, I can't even think of the right word, different classes and stuff. So like I competed in figure, but there's bikini and wellness and bodybuilding. Each one of those has things that they're looking for, but you're being judged by the person sitting there that day. What do they think looks better? You could go to 2 different shows and bring the exact same package and place differently because the person sitting in this chair is going, your shoulders are not big enough or not wide enough, or your glutes aren't tight enough, or you're holding too much water and all of these things. And you're literally standing on the stage getting compared to other people. And then it brought in like being super competitive with other people on stage. Like you hear people like, well, I look better than them. Why did they win?
Oh, wow.
It's very hard to be judged solely based on how you look. It has nothing to do with, even like powerlifting competitions. It's about how much you can lift. It's objective.
Yeah.
You lift it or you don't. Can you?
That's true.
Can you not? And this is what you look like. And that's very hard.
Wow.
And then you've got people in that space that all they care about is how they look. That's all that matters. They're willing to do whatever it takes. Steroids, lots of low calorie days, lots of it doesn't matter. Whatever it takes to win, that's all they care about.
I got to say that when you mentioned the part about, because that's another thing that was an eye opener for me when we were talking about it in Messenger about there's some categories where they use drugs, not all of them, but you were saying there are categories and you really have to do your research to make sure that you enter a competition where it's not like they're not using steroids. And I forget what the terminology you use, but that just blew my mind. And, and it also it's also like a mind game, Kristen, because, we see these people, right, lifting weights and doing, flexing and all of that. And we're thinking, oh my gosh, they're doing it. I mean, yes, there are some people who are doing it naturally by diet, lifting, water, all of that alone. But there are these people who are doing it with the help of drugs, but they don't talk about it. So it leaves us regular folk to believe that, oh my gosh, if they can do it, I can't do it. So I must be the loser.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is, I did 2 local shows in Wisconsin. There was people there doing steroids. So, you look at pro bodybuilders, I'd be surprised. There's very few of them who are natural athletes. And if they are, they're genetically gifted. You're probably never going to get like that. But yeah, so they have natural federations, but I've heard that even people in there use steroids because if you use them for a time to build muscle and then stop and they test you after you've stopped, now you've technically used steroids, but you're natural now. And so it's hard to find anywhere where you can literally say I'm competing against people who have never touched a performance enhancing drug. And I want to be clear that I don't mind that people use performance enhancing drugs, but I do think it's not super ethical to not share that or to act like you're natural and you're
right.
not.
Right.
I also think if you want to be a natural athlete, you have to really stand behind that. And it's hard because I always want to be a natural athlete, but I will tell you that there are days where I'm like, I would really like to take some steroids. It's hard. It's hard to have this and go, but what is it worth? Is it worth winning a plastic trophy on a stage? Because it can take a toll on your health. Because the other thing too is there's some coaches out there that if they run steroids, they're very good at it. There's other coaches that'll be like, here, just take this. And you have no idea, especially as women, what that can do to your hormones. You've got people who are 22-year-old girls. What if they never get a cycle back and can never have children? There's things that people don't think about. I know people who are like, oh, I now have thyroid issues because I dieted and did too much cardio for way too long. Because there's coaches out there who say, oh, you want to compete in 12 weeks? Fine, I'll find a way to get you there. What you need is a coach who says, you want to compete? That's great. We're going to do this stuff and we'll compete when you're ready. When you are in a good place where I can, a lot of ways, especially if you're not already into training, a lot of coaches, good coaches, if you want to compete would say, okay, we can do that, but we're going to spend a year building metabolism, building your physique, giving you muscle, and then we'll do some cuts and see where you come down. And we'll compete when your body's ready. Not we'll compete and we'll do whatever it takes to get you there in 12 weeks. That's not good, but a lot of coaches will do that. And after a show, you need a coach who's going to help you reverse diet out of that. So you can't go from eating 1,500 calories and being restrictive to just eating whatever you want. You have to slowly add calories so that you don't yo-yo from, some people will put on 30 pounds in 2 weeks. Now, some of it's water because a lot of times when you compete, you cut water. So the day before you don't drink water. I remember, I remember there was a post on Facebook or Snapchat or something that was like, I can't wait till finals are over because I just need a drink of water. Yeah, so a girl almost passed out on stage because she hadn't had water in 24 hours. Like that's what they're willing to do to look that way. You want to be peeled? Don't have any water. Yes. You cut water, like, because water will, water will sit on top of your muscle and it'll make you look different. So you have to pull water. It's not safe. And if you don't have a coach who knows what they're doing, it can be very dangerous. You know, someone's eating 800 calories, doing 5 hours of cardio a week. So meaning like an hour every day and training and not drinking water the daily, like that could really end badly. And so you have people then, if you don't have a coach who helps you reverse out of this, like I've heard some horror stories about people who are like, oh, my coach dumped me the night after the show. They were just like, I'm done with you. And now you're left on your own and you have no idea how to reverse yourself out of this. And then you put on 30 pounds in 2 weeks. Wow. And I will tell you that probably one of the hardest things on your body or the most unhealthy things for your body is to yo-yo in weight significantly like that. So to go from 30 pounds down to 30 pounds up to 30 pounds, that does a lot of damage on your body and your metabolism. And that's not the healthy way to do it. So you want to slowly add weight back on. And really like 15 to 20 pounds is what you kind of want to put on depending on who you are. But there's people who put on 50 pounds on their off season. And then they're like, oh, well, I can't get back in shape. So I guess I better compete again because that's the only way I know how to stay in shape. And that's the problem that I see is like, I could have just gone back and been like, well, I like the way I looked and I can't control my eating or whatever unless I'm competing. So let me just do it again. Instead, I was like, you know what? I need to figure out how to eat and be healthy and train when I'm not competing. And when I can do that, then maybe I can compete again. Because I don't want to tell anyone I'll never compete again. I think it's highly unlikely. But today I was at the gym. I work out in a gym where lots of bodybuilders hang out. And I will tell you every day, I'm like, I kind of want to do it again. But I know in my head what it did to me and how careful I need to be. Yeah. But not everybody can do that. Some people are like, I just love being lean so much. That's the only answer.
So this whole conversation is just so intriguing to me because, again, you know, there's so much that I didn't know about bodybuilding, but what I did know or do know a lot about is, you know, the body and body image issues. Because one of the things that I used to do when I had a compulsive eating disorder is that I would use running as a form of training. So it's like, oh, let me sign up for this half marathon or this marathon because I've gained, 10 or 15 pounds. And I know when I'm training, I'm going to go back into it. I'm going to be strict with the carbs and drink a lot of water, get some running miles in. So I'll pretty much either lose it or I won't gain any because, I'm working out so much or whatever I do gain, it'll be muscle. So if the numbers on the scale is a little higher, like I'm okay with that. And so that part I do know about this idea of using exercise as punitive, right? Like it's a punishment because it's like, well, I gained weight, so let me exercise, right? And I remember training for marathons and being outside and let's say like, when I was working in corporate, we had, office lunch. And so we had pizza. And so I would have like 2 slices of pizza. And so I remember like after lunch, waiting for my food to digest, going outside, hitting the pavement, running downtown Milwaukee, like you just had 2 slices of pizza. You better burn that off. If you don't, you're going to be a fatty. You're going to go back to over 250 pounds. And I just remember being out there, just like running it off. And that is so not healthy. But people on the outside, like no one ever knew that I was competing, running marathons because I was beating my body, beating myself up, right? It's like, and then when I would post, oh my gosh, I had pizza. It's like, so what, who cares? Kind of like you were saying earlier, people are like, so what, who cares? Girl, you do all this running, you can have what you want. But it's like, no, it's like so much deeper been the food. And it really was my own insecurities, because my compulsive eating, but the compulsive eating disorder started, right after for me, after I was molested as a little girl and I turned to food for comfort. So there was a lot of underlying issues that I had to heal, my inner child. And so I just love the fact that you said that a lot of people, of course, not everybody, but it makes sense that a lot of people who enter into the bodybuilding world, it is to like compensate for an insecurity that they have. And I don't know if that's like part my issue, like why I don't want to go into it, because I'm thinking in my head, like, well, I don't want to be all restrictive again, because I was kind of like that with the compulsive eating disorder. It's like, don't eat. And then when I can't eat, it's like, eat. Right. And so it's like, I don't want to even go back into that, like that mentality. And then the other part of me is kind of like, but Andrea, you've come so far, like celebrate it. And I think that, again, based on our conversation and too, based on this discussion right now, I don't think that I'm really in a solid enough place to be able to say I'm ready to compete and deal with that restrictive lifestyle around food because of having or suffering through disordered eating.
So one, like I see your post on Facebook, and I feel like you have come so far. And so I feel like, maybe you'd be okay, but I also feel like you have to be honest with yourself. Like, is this going to trigger something? Because I've seen people who had binge eating disorders who think they're over it. They do competing and now they have the same problem. Anytime they're not competing, they're 50 pounds overweight. And then they're like, oh, I've had enough. I can't deal with this. I'm just going to compete again because that's the only way I know how to be in control. And it becomes a control thing. It's like, I'm either on the wagon or I'm off the wagon. That's a binge restrict mindset.
Yes.
And it's hard. It was 4 years ago and I still struggle. I'm much better. I'm doing much better, but I struggled. I think it was a year ago, maybe. I finally was like, you have to stop tracking food. You have to take a break. You have to just allow yourself to eat. You know what to eat for health, eat for what makes you feel good, and then have treats when you want them. But I had to go for like 6 months, just no tracking. And guess what? I don't binge anymore. Like, I overeat sometimes and I eat things that aren't the most nutritious thing, but I'm not in the cupboard eating. And all it took was saying, I need to just loosen the reins, loosen control. Yes. And allow my body to tell me what it wants. Yes. And then the other thing too is like when you start training and eating because you love yourself and not because you hate yourself, it's such a different experience. Yes. And the one thing from a podcast that I heard that like really sticks in my mind, and it's something that every day when I think like maybe I want to do that again, or when I'm thinking about being restrictive or overtraining myself because of how I look, it's train for health and aesthetics will follow. Yes. Train for aesthetics, a lot of times you're going to lose your health and your aesthetics at the end.
Wow. That is so powerful. It's so powerful because it's like the aesthetic is a byproduct being healthy.
Yes. Yes. You're saying I need to look aesthetically pleasing at any cost. That's what leads you to steroids and restrictive eating and hours of cardio. And eventually I've seen people where like your metabolism is like, I'm done. Now it's like they're eating 1,100 calories and gaining weight because their body's like, we're done. We're not going to function if you treat me like this. And not even from the food and exercise perspective. Part of it for me was like mobility. My body didn't move well. I was in pain. So I remember going to a chiropractor during my competing days and he was like, I need you to stop lifting. And I'm like, I can't. I'm about to compete. I can't not train. I went to see him again. I think it was in 2019. I was like, you know what? He did really good work. I'm kind of in pain. It's time to go back. So I went back to him and he was like, I really think you need to stop lifting. Your body, your hips are super tight. You're not moving well. And I was scared, but I was like, you know what? Okay, we're going to do body weight only movements and mobility work for 6 months. And I move so much better. I don't maybe lift as heavy as I did, but I lift with form that feels good. I'm not sore. My back doesn't hurt. My hips don't hurt. I move well. And that's health. Moving well. I mean, you don't want to be 50 years old and be like, I used to be able to squat, but I can't because I hurt my back. It's like, I want to move well my whole life. And the more, the better I move, the more my body is going to look the way I want it to look.
Yes.
And that's health, not aesthetics. That's saying, what does my body need from me?
Yes. I love that you said that about the 6 months of not tracking, because one of the ways that I healed myself from compulsive eating is that I did like you. And I said, you know what? I'm going to stop labeling food as good or bad. There's no good food. There's no bad food. There is only food. And I gave myself permission to eat whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. And so when I wanted to have 3 Snickers, I let myself do that. Now, I'll be honest with you. At first, I ate everything that I had ever restricted myself. Every time I went to the grocery store, I was like, you know what? I always wanted to try the ice cream with the chocolate chips and the caramel and the vanilla and the toffee, and I'm buying it this time. And I bought it and I ate it. And over time, it was kind of like I really don't feel good. And it's like, you know what? This food, it really isn't as good as I imagined it to be. So it's like, why am I still eating this? And then the body naturally, because I think we let go of this control or this idea of something being good or bad, and we just let things be. It's kind of like, you know what? I got that Snicker, but I'm really feeling an apple. Maybe I'll get some apple with peanut butter. Right. And so you just start and then asking your body, like, what do you want to eat? Right. Because when you take away the judgment around food, the good or bad food, is kind of like, hey, body, what do you want to eat now? Okay. Eggs with avocado. Let's do that. Right. Or it's like, oh, you want an orange right now or orange juice? Okay, let's do that. So you start making better choices because you've taken away the judgment from food. And so I'm so glad to hear you say that, because again, like you're a healthy person. You've always exercised, you regulate your diet. Again, that doesn't mean your diet was perfect or whatever. And then I'm like on I don't want to say like the opposite side, because I absolutely love my body. I mean, I want to like be a little more cut and everything, but you know what? If I get there, I'll be excited. If I don't, I'm good because I love my body. So it's like my approach is different than yours. But what's interesting is that we both kind of did the same thing and got like the same result.
Yeah, it's like you're allowing the food to have control over you instead of you being the one in control. And it's crazy how when you take down that barrier and say, I can eat whatever I want, whenever I want to, nothing's good or bad. There's things that nourish me better than other things. But what I feel like today, it's like the things that you think are so good, they don't even taste that good. It's like, meh. Like, meh. We went out for ice cream like 2 weekends ago, and I threw out half of it because I ate it and I was like, I'm done. I'm full. I'm satisfied. But in the old me would have ate it all because here's my time to have it. Tomorrow, you can't have it. So you better eat it now. And we have Girl Scout cookies in the house, and I touch them maybe once a week, or sometimes it's more, but sometimes I'm like, that doesn't really sound good. And so when I took away the food's control over me, I regained the control. And so I'm tracking food again now because I do have some aesthetic goals. But the one thing that was really concerning to me when I was tracking macros for a while was I was allowing the macros to control me, meaning I had this set of numbers and I had to hit it at, all the time. I had to be perfect. So at one point I was up to like 3,000 calories a day. I was eating like 400 or 500 grams of carbs because I was trying to build, but I was allowing the numbers to control me. So like I was stuffed, but I was like, the number, I still have more food. I got to eat it. Or like I would be starving, don't have any macros, can't eat it. And it's like, I trained myself to not listen to my body and to listen to a set of arbitrary numbers. Oof. And so I had to retrain myself how to say, are you hungry? Are you thirsty? Are you tired? Are you full? Do you need to eat more? And that's a lot of work, but that is something bodybuilding will do when you're like in a muscle building phase. It's like here, you just want to keep cramming food and you're like miserable and bloated and, but I got to hit these numbers. And so now I allow myself a little bit more flexibility when I track. The main things I'm tracking are calories because I know where I should, and not like an exact number, which is hard for me because I'm a control freak, that type A personality. So it used to be like, this is exactly. And now it's like, okay, well, I want to be roughly around 2,500 calories a day because I'm trying to like add a little mass. But the only things I'm going to focus on are the calorie number and the protein, because protein is something that it's hard for me. So I'm like, I want to focus on those two things. The rest of the day, I'm going to allow myself to say like, what sounds better, grapes or nuts? So like carb or fat, it doesn't matter, whatever feels good that day. And if I'm super full, I'm going to stop eating. If I'm really hungry, I'm going to eat some more. So I'm tracking, so I'm putting some barrier, but I'm allowing I'm still listening to my body.
You're being intuitive. Yeah. You're eating intuitively instead of, like you said, letting some number or some guideline control you.
Right.
Oh my gosh. This discussion was so amazing. So as we close, what's one thing, because we've shared a lot, we've discussed a lot, which I think, again, is powerful information for people to know, especially, and the thing about it, it's not just women who struggle with body image. Like there are lots of guys who struggle with body images, right? And so this can really be for everyone. So if there was only one thing that you wanted the listeners to like walk away from this episode with, what would that be? I know that's on the spot question, but I always like to ask it, and I don't tell people I'm going to ask it because.
I will just say, like, as you approach any type of fitness journey, whether it's, just trying to lose weight or you are going to compete, that come from a place of loving yourself and taking care of yourself and listening to what your body tells you. So like, if something doesn't feel right, stop or ask the question. Don't just listen to a coach when things don't feel right. Something your body is going to tell you. So just listen to it.
Oh my gosh, that's actually really good advice. That is really good advice. So Kristen, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for your bravery and your openness to have this discussion. I don't take it for granted. And I'm just so grateful for your wise counsel. Anytime I've like hopped in your inbox, like, hey, I'm thinking about this. And especially when it comes to fitness, because I followed you and I see like back from, 2014, 2015, even before competing, I thought, like I said, you had a great body and you were always doing amazing things and all of that. So thank you for sharing this with me and my listeners. I really, really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity, because I just don't know that I would share my story without you asking me to do so. I know I was really nervous about doing it, but it feels good to talk about it and make it very comfortable. So thanks.
Yay!
Hey loves, are you looking for a safe place to hang out while you're healing with other like-minded individuals? If so, then I would love for you to join my private Facebook community called Healing While Discovering Yourself, named after the podcast. This community is for those who are truly seeking a safe place to heal and also show up authentically. If this interests you, then I'm going to invite you to go to Facebook/groups/Healing While Discovering. I look forward to seeing you in the group. Tony Robbins said, "The quality of your life is a direct reflection of the quality of the questions you're asking yourself." And that's why I'm inviting you to download my free guide called 5 Powerful Questions to Ask Yourself to help you take back control of your life. In this guide, you will learn how to shift your mood, break negative thought patterns, and identify beliefs and stories so that you can explore the truthfulness of these stories. Go to andreamichelle.com/powerful to download this free guide today.